Oh, hey, here's how you guys can change your virtual background. You know, you see at the bottom of your screen, it says stop video. There's a little chevron to the right of it.
Hmm.
If you click on the little chevron, it says one of the options is change virtual background. And if you click on that, it gives you a bunch of options.
Thanks. Might not try it tonight, but I'll try it on one of my internal meetings.
So this is the one I got now. I don't know why it didn't change. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Well,
Bucolic one.
Very pleasant, Kurt.
I'm now in a forest. I think you could probably add your own too if you want to.
Well, I hope we're not recording yet.
we are recording. Meetings. I started right at 6.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call. Oh, Rebecca's here. Perfect. Okay, 6:02. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Molly, do you want to do roll call?
Yes. We have Chair Chastain,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Steeman,
Here.
Commissioner Donnan, Commissioner Nelson,
Here.
Commissioner Casey,
You might not be connected to audio yet.
Rebecca, I just unmuted you. Oh, she just muted herself again. Well, Commissioner Casey's here, but we can't hear her. And Commissioner Monfort.
Here.
Awesome. Can move on to the next item.
Did you get Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda, but before we do that, I'll just make a quick announcement for our attendees. We will not be doing the emailed public comments as it's posted in the agenda. Instead, when we get to that agenda item, we will simply unmute you if you have comments from the floor. Okay, item number 2, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Kirk, second. Perfect. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes, I guess. What are we now? 5. Can't really hear Rebecca. I'm not sure if there's nonverbal cues that she can give a yes or no, but
She wasn't at the meeting, so I might abstain anyway.
okay. So we'll have to record her vote, but motion passes. Moving on to item.
Oh, are you talking about me? This is Rebecca.
Oh, there you are.
Yay!
Hey.
Yeah.
Would you like to approve, disapprove?
I'm
or
sorry, my
abstain?
bandwidth is so low, y'all. It's abstain.
Okay, perfect. 401, right? Abstain goes last. Just forget the order. Okay, item number 3, 3.1, cap funding and finance discussion. I think we hand this to, is it Nick or Ryan?
Yeah, this is Nick Gower.
Okay.
I can speak
yours.
to that.
Nick, I just gave you the host so you can share your screen.
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping that would happen. Okay, thank you very much. I'm Nick Gower. I work at HIP Investor, and we advise cities and counties across the country on funding and financing climate action. In 2019, we released a report with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network on funding and financing climate action plans. I'm dropping a link to that right now, so you can review that now or later. So in working with the Rincon team, we've drafted an initial funding and financing climate action map for Chico with the intention of demonstrating the breadth of funding approaches available to fund your target climate actions to achieve your reduction targets. In our funding and financing climate action map, we focused on capital intensive measures. Codes and ordinances are very important, and Rincon's done an excellent job prioritizing cost savings opportunities for future construction, but some measures do require upfront costs. And we're here to show you that it doesn't all have to be budgetary spending or debt. So I'd like to kind of cover a few capital sources. Most of these you'll already be familiar with. Grants can provide a substantial source of repayment-free capital if cities have the staff capacity to invest in grant management. Partnerships are well suited for cities who cannot or do not want to own a project outright and are willing to forego some of the revenue generation or cost savings to a third party. They can be excellent way to secure capital from non-government or corporate actors. Loans, as I'm sure you're familiar, give cities upfront capital, principal and interest must be repaid. Many instances, municipal borrowers can receive low interest rates for impact-driven projects. Bonds can be a good fit for really large capitalization for infrastructure projects in the millions or greater. Budgets, as you know, refer to general funds, but city budgets are often pretty overburdened right now, supporting citizens during the pandemic. So now's the time to really explore alternative financing approaches. So I mentioned this work is a roadmap for funding climate action, but it's also a communication tool. It can demonstrate kind of the breadth of funding opportunities, the feasibility of financing strategies with real life examples in similar cities with similar projects. So many of these approaches are already pretty familiar with Chico's transportation or facilities departments, but the innovation can come in implementing projects across several of these approaches simultaneously. We're not suggesting that any one of these approaches is a perfect fit for Chico, but many options are available and they can be blended to support climate action goals with lessened impact on the balance sheet or the debt capacity. So now I would like to go to share the map with you. And I want to stress that this is an interactive document. So I am going to share the screen. Let me know when you can see the map.
Yes.
Got it, great. Okay. So you'll see this is organized by project type, and under project type, we have the relevant climate action measure. There's also the capital type, the funding and financing pathway, the resource and partner that could be a good resource or partner for a financing strategy. And then we provide a case example. And as I mentioned, these are hyperlinked. It's a web document. So I can walk through a few examples. Feel free to speak up if you'd like me to click through to a specific case study. As you see, I'll start with public transportation. It's expanded a lot with public-private partnerships and sponsorships. EIFDs, Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, have been much more prevalent in California recently. I wanted to call out the CalSTRA grant recipients here. One really comparable, what could be a comparable city, Anaheim, received 40 zero-emission electric buses, doubled service, up to 8 routes. This also included a solar canopy. I called out a number of different grant programs for active transportation, bike, and pedestrian improvements. But I specifically wanted to call out here Santa Monica's use of developer impact fees. So developer impact fees are fees that are imposed on builders or developers for the future impact, compensate for the future impact that their building projects might have on city infrastructure like roads and bridges. So I called out a special one here. This is the PG&E SST turnkey program, which is already under review. I provided a specific example. Cal Poly recently implemented this program in 2015 for energy efficiency upgrades on campus. There's another cluster added here. This is tariff on-bill financing. So this one is unique in that it's actually both a program and a funding approach. So tariff on-bill financing can be implemented by a city, utility, or a third-party administrator. It can be a revolving access to renewable capital. And the real exciting part about it is it can foster equitable climate action because it's not additional debt. It's repaid by cost savings. And the tariff aspect of this is unique in that the debt is not associated with the specific the homeowner or the renter. It's associated with the utility account, kind of similar to utility infrastructure. So it's not adding to their debt capacity either. We're actually mentioning this strategy in the affordable electrification and energy retrofits section here. As you can see, I've also, so this is the tariff on bill financing with an example. I also called out this the new build program, Building Initiative for Low Emission Development. That's a new program. It's being launched this year, and the program will provide incentives for the deployment of near zero emission building technology in low income residential buildings. I also wanted to call out a new program in the residential and commercial solar and battery cluster here, the DAC-SASH program, which I believe is administered by Grid Alternatives. This is a California state program providing millions in incentives for help homeowners in disadvantaged communities go solar. I do understand Chico has a disadvantaged community, and this could be another opportunity for equitable climate action. It's not putting an undue burden on a lower income population. The community solar and storage is fairly extensive in that there's several different ownership models. So there's a lot of different approaches for funding and financing. I realize this is not on kind of the immediate short-term list of measures to be implemented, but I found it prudent to highlight since there's such a wide array of possible models and financing strategies. Similar to DAC-SASH, there's two new programs here. There is the Green Tariff Program, along with the DAC Green Tariff Program, which involve different ownership models again. But those can be opportunities for equitable climate action if Chico were to pursue community solar and storage. Privately owned EV charging is broken out into two different categories. There's based on the ownership model. Cal EVIP has some exciting new incentives for private ownership model, and if the city were to pursue public-private partnerships with some core organizations like ChargePoint or Blink, it would be a great partner. Cities like Encinitas and Chula Vista are using collaborative purchasing to drive down the costs of implementing a citywide infrastructure for city-owned EV charging. Now, I realize Chico's already implementing foundation grants for their urban forestry program, but if they were to expand and continue that program, there's opportunities such as stormwater management fees. Portland, Oregon is utilizing this innovative program that would provide opportunities for funding outside of just grant funding. Now, I realize that this is kind of a lot to take in. There's a lot of links here, but I wanted to kind of provide this resource and open it up for either feedback now or later. I can submit my email through, and I'd welcome any feedback for tailoring this to meet your specific needs.
Thanks, Nick. I have a few comments and questions, but I'll open it up for everybody else first. Anybody have comments or questions for Nick at the moment? Art, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't click on all the links, but I've handled this from a very personal point of view. And when we talk about residential retrofits for electrification, I'll probably need a new HVAC system, along about the time the city tells me to get one. And I clicked on PG&E rebates, and they don't mention heat pumps, which is what we're going to have to be into.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've talked to I've talked to McClellan, which is one of the biggest dealers in town, and all they have is those little things for motels where they don't have any centralized systems. They don't even know about them. So I don't know how
Yeah, no, it seems like the PG&E rebate program is not comprehensive for heat pumps there, but let me do some research and see if we can find additional resource for you, and we can include that in a future iteration of this.
Okay, because that's going to be a big deal here.
I understand.
And I saw that, in Maine, I did come across one reference on the web that Maine had apparently introduced a program where they had electrical retrofits and everybody was doing heat pumps there, and their system heat pumps. They're not just little individual room heat pumps. Okay, so that's all the info I have.
No, that's helpful. This is exactly the pieces that affect people personally that we want to make sure are covered in our comprehensive research here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, I saw you throw a hand up.
Yeah, and my question's for Kirk. When's the city going to come tell you, do you have to get a new HVAC?
Well, I think somewhere around 2030 or so, I think an earlier iteration of our program was they're going to say that at some point along about then, if you need a new one, if you need a new system, then you're going to have to replace it with a heat pump.
Can we get a clarification from Ryan what exactly we're proposing in the plan?
Yeah, this is Ryan. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. We don't have any specific time that we're going to require replacement at phase out, but it is something that's kind of discussed in the plan as an option if we're not getting the voluntary uptake we need to hit our retrofit requirements. And I will say that PG&E does not have very good incentives right now for heat pump retrofits, but there have been changes at the state level that allow for that. For a while, beneficial electrification was not something that could be incentivized with energy efficiency dollars, but that has changed. And so those rebates should be coming down the line relatively soon.
Okay.
Ryan, I just chatted something that references the change that you were speaking to.
Yeah, it's called the 3-prong rule, and it was updated to allow this beneficial electrification to happen. But I think CEC and PG&E have been a little slow on rolling out those rebates. But another great reason to go with a CCA, they'll have additional flexibility on rebates to offer and things like that.
May I continue?
Sure, go ahead, Kirk.
There was a story on NPR about a week ago that other communities around the country are thinking about doing what we're doing, which is on new construction forbidding gas hookups and ripping out the ones on old dwellings as they replace their stuff with all electric. Anyway, the oil and gas industry has been lobbying state legislatures to pass state rules that will forbid localities from instituting rules like we're contemplating. That is, forbidding the installation of gas hookups. So the industry is responding to our initiatives here. Do you know about that?
Is that a question for me, Kirk?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're definitely has been a recent response to the 40 plus cities who have passed these ordinances. I have not heard clarification from the state one way or another on when and how they're going to electrify buildings at the state level. I've heard that they may require some pieces of equipment to be all electric by 2023, which is the next code cycle. And then I've heard that there's a possibility that everything will be electrified, but that's likely not till 2026. We'll just have to wait and see what the next code draft looks like.
Okay.
But any other comments or questions for Nick on this document?
Yeah, just Nick, I thought you're doing a, let me see, am I muted up? I can see my little green paper. I think it was really a good job on that one. I really liked it. I went through a number of them. I do think it's important that you somehow highlight, like you did for us, that those specific ones that are going to help us meet our specific targets. I thought that was, it is somewhat overwhelming to look at the whole thing. And so the fact that you called out a few of them was really helpful in that sense.
Okay.
I also appreciated the one about the self-generation battery storage. There's many ways to do it. And so that was really nice that you laid that out that way.
That was going to be one of my comments, as well as if there's any way to kind of highlight some of the specific ones that we should be giving priority to, because this is an incredible resource. I mean, you clearly put a lot of effort and time into it, and there's a lot for us to build on here, which is really exciting. But like Mark just said, kind of highlighting those ones that you just did was one of my questions.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great feedback. The intention is both to be broad and specific, to go wide and deep. But I think that can help us go a little bit deeper by getting more specific and by highlighting the either actively being pursued or kind of best fit current state. Okay.
Yeah, this is Rebecca. I'm sorry, I'm like dialed in, so if it's confusing to have me jump in while I'm still muted on my WebEx box. But yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with some of these funding sources and working in different parts of the state, you know, with different funding sources and partnerships. And I know that some of them aren't, you know, like in the next couple of years wouldn't be really viable for Chico, like in particular, not having a very big disadvantaged, you know, census tract. You know, the SCHIP funding has been pretty well tied up with some of the larger solar storage developers, tied up a lot of those incentives like right out of the gate. Was really inequitable, actually, from my perspective. So yeah, I was just wondering, I have like could provide some feedback just based on my experience with stuff like Cal EVIP. And, you know, GRID does administer the DAC/SASH program, and, you know, there's only so much solar we can put in the Chapman neighborhood and the Barber neighborhood based on, you know, the housing stock. And I just like love to be able to share, make a contribution in terms of like what seems like viable, you know, based on my experience. I'm just not sure where to provide that input to.
Well, I just dropped my email, and that would be incredibly valuable. Thank you very. Oh, you're on the phone, so I understand that you probably don't have access to the chat, but you can reach me at Nick at hit. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I am on both because the audio on the web is not good for me. So, okay, great. Thank you.
Same with me. No, that would be very valuable. I do not live in Chico, and your local knowledge is very important to making this a best fit for your city.
Good. Anybody else want to jump in? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. So I had some similar questions as some I think Mark and Sherry and Rebecca kind of already touched on a little bit. So I mean, this is a fantastic resource, lots of information there. I haven't had the time to go through all of it yet. And so one of those, I had similar things about, hey, how do we zero in on this? Like, what is the most actionable? Like, what are the things that the city, you know, that this commission could make recommendations about? Yes, here's, you know, here's A to Z, and we would recommend that we pursue, you know, A, B, and C, because that aligns with our climate action plan and that aligns with our specific recommendations, and which ones do we go after that are actionable. So that was kind of like my part one. And then part two was this sort of looking through those, you know, what's competitive and non-competitive in those sources, because you've got, there's grants, there's loans, there's incentives, and, you know, a lot of them, when you're in a competitive versus a non-competitive situation, it can make a huge difference. I think one of the most effective things, you know, I've seen in the last few years is what, you know, state OPR has done with the SB2 and the LEAP funding, you know, both of which the city of Chico has benefited from, and I think some great ways from receiving that funding. And it was unusual in terms of being non-competitive. It's basically like, hey, turn this in and you're going to get the money. Not turn this in and you're competing with 500 other cities and counties asking for the same small pot of money. And so, and I apologize if I haven't dug deep enough in the information you sent, but that was kind of one of my questions along the competitive and non-competitive. Where's the best place for the city of Chico to focus and that we can align that's actionable with the recommendations in the climate action plan? And it was kind of a mouthful, but that's kind of my thinking from listening and what we've gone through so far.
No, I can see how that would be valuable. I think we can try and convey that through kind of a focused lead on specific strategies within those clusters, and there will likely be a continuum. I would imagine that most of the grant funding will be highly competitive. Some of the loan programs, the state loan programs will be competitive. Some of them will not, and we can test ways to identify that through the map.
Thank you.
Thanks. I had one, this might make it too complicated to kind of read or follow, so feel free to shoot it down. But, you know, some of these are specific to the city where some of them are specific to residents or businesses. Is there any way to clearly, you know, because again, there's a lot happening here, to kind of identify like these ones are for city, these ones are businesses, and these ones are residential resources?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of done that way through the clusters, but we can put a label on the clusters where it's clearly identified. Is this a resource for a resident or a commercial business, or is this a resource for the city? But I think it would not be as complex as you might be envisioning, because it would be fairly the same for each strategy within a cluster, because it's really focused on the cluster is who's being supported or where's the project having an impact. So if it's supporting a citizen, then it would likely have a cost to the citizen. The unique one would be the on-bill tariff financing program, which as a strategy would be a opportunity for a citizen, but as a action, developing that program, whether it's through the city or through the utility, PG&E, or whether it's through a third-party administrator, that would potentially that would require capital to fund the program, but would be an access to capital for residents.
Thanks. Anything else for Nick? Yeah, go ahead, Mark. I don't think you're muted. Are you?
You can hear me
I know
now.
I
There we
can
go.
mute on my phone and my
Back,
computer.
back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Just one last one is I would encourage you then, kind of in these highlightings would be to highlight the business opportunities available with this plan. And specifically on the community solar and storage, you have more partners in that one than any of the others. There's lots of opportunities, and the CCA is looking, the Butte Power is looking for local power generators they prioritize that. There's some small hydro generators up in the Fed that they're already working with, but local power and this opportunity that we could have local investors investing in local power is attractive, I think, to the business community in the sense. As you
Yeah,
point out, there's
great.
lots of ways to do that partnership. So.
Yep, there's a lot of different models, a lot of different ownership structures, but it's great to know that the CCA Butte Power is pursuing that actively, and I will see how we can make that as resourceful and helpful to them as possible. Is there any more that you can share about their current local power partnerships?
Well, one thing I could tell you is that they've already done a solar overlay zone for Butte County, so they're really it's ready plug and play. And so the idea that that would be one of the opportunities, and that there is partnerships available, I think would be something to highlight.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Anything else?
Yeah, this is Rebecca, and not for Nick necessarily, but just something that some of the municipalities I've worked with and am working with now, like the city of Sacramento, Ontario, and Stockton, have done things like requests for interest from community groups, like for their electric vehicle infrastructure blueprint plans, or what businesses and nonprofits might be interested, community groups might be interested in helping us advance this said plan. It's been just a bunch of meetings, but an opportunity for people to come together and bring their, resources to the table. Just one way I thought it's been really useful to get the right group of stakeholders in the room that are motivated towards a particular end. And then you have people at the table that can help you be more competitive or help build, a better mousetrap, I guess, to be able to get grant funding. So, I've just participated in a few of those over the last couple of years. Requests for interest. So maybe those places like public infrastructure, like public EV infrastructure, might be one way to call, private groups to the table that can help, actually do more work than the city could do alone. Let them do the work.
All right, good idea.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity to aggregate the demand and potentially for collaborative purchasing as well.
Dave, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was a little late. I'm here in Scottsdale, Arizona, working for the Giants for spring training. I kept up on the stuff with the sewer system from the Paradise. It might be a little off subject, but I suggested to a couple of counselors that there are ways to generate electricity through the sewage line. If they're coming down the hill like that, they make turbines that actually go in the system that generates electricity. And I just wanted to throw that out. I haven't really seen any in at least 10 years, 15 years, but might be something as our commission may suggest or get up to date. If that is being suggested from Paradise, to bring that line down to the sewage treatment plant to generate some electricity from all the crap flowing downhill.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm not sure where that would fit in our climate action plan, given the infancy of that conversation at this point, to my understanding.
Yeah, it's like free energy.
Right. Something to keep on the table, I suppose. Any other comments or questions for Nick on the financing plan? Well, I just want to say, Nick, this is a really comprehensive document, and I appreciate all of the live links and being able to see like case study examples. I think it's really well done. And I think it's going to be a really great resource for us moving forward. So thank you for all of that.
Fantastic. And I've taken notes on all of your feedback, and we'll integrate that into the next iteration of this. And I really appreciate your time and your thoughtful recommendations and feedback.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick. You're welcome to join us for the rest of our meeting, but I'm sure you have other things you'd rather be doing with your evening. So
I've got a 1.5-year-old daughter to get bathed in bed, so I'm going to head out, but I really appreciate y'all. Have a good evening.
thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
With that, we'll move on to item 3.2, which is the draft cap outline. I believe Ryan or maybe Melissa will take that one.
I would just add really quick, I wish we had this last time and the other cap. I mean, this was so nice to have financing.
It's going to be great.
I never going to pay for this stuff. That's wonderful. So in a larger, thanks Brendan, thanks Ryan for having that as part of this climate action plan.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thanks for the feedback.
Hey, Ryan, cap outline.
Yeah, I can share my screen if that's helpful, but I believe you guys had this ahead of time. So really just wanted to be available to hear any comments or questions you had about the outline. And if you wanted to talk through anything around what we're kind of proposing to include in the document.
I had a few questions, but I'll open the floor to everybody else first. Comments?
Yeah, this is Rebecca. I was just wondering if you could expound a little bit more about what would be going into the, campfire lessons in terms of like climate migrant community.
Yeah, so our thought there was kind of to really show that Chico is on the front lines of climate change already, and one of the cities in California who's kind of maybe not most experienced this migration, or I guess most experienced the migration, maybe not most affected by climate change, compared to like city towns like Paradise. Really show that this is already happening and it's something that Chico can prepare for. And I think a lot of the things that we're proposing as measures around housing and building development and electrification and resiliency kind of play into that and help support making Chico more resilient to those changes in the future as well. So that's kind of where we're going with that.
I was wondering if I have a lot to say tonight. I was just wondering if anyone was familiar with the housing report that they just, I don't remember who penned it, that they've been working on in terms of the impacts to housing in the region.
I think it was a post-campfire report, and it was on a number of topics, including housing, but also economic development and other things. Is that the one you're referring to? That was done by 3 Corps?
I'm referring to the one that was done specific to housing. So maybe we're thinking about 2 different things, or maybe I only saw it's like 300-page report just on the housing study. But anyway, if anyone's interested and haven't seen it, I'm happy to share it. If it feels relevant to the recommendation.
I'd love to see it if you can.
There's a post-campfire study that was done also by BCAG And it has, yeah, population movement and housing. Is that the one that you're referring to then maybe, Rebecca?
No, I'm thinking about the one that was done specific on the housing market conditions and by Peloton.
Got it. Yes, that's the third
I'll
one.
send that. Oh, okay. Yeah, if anyone's interested, I'd be happy to share. This is super telling.
Thanks. But maybe Mark, did you have some questions or comments?
Well, I was just going to add that maybe you want to expand that to include the Bear Fire and the Oroville Dam spillway. I mean, we're talking about 3 major climate fuel disasters within 3 years. So it's not just one. And we have fallout from all 3 of those. People came to Chico in all 3 of those situations.
I know we mentioned the Oroville spillway. I think we might also mention another fire. I don't know if it's the Bear specifically, but we expand on that a little bit in the report.
Okay.
Cool. Not seeing anybody else jumping in. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask, so let's see, 6 for introduction, I guess, like in the outline number 6. I think this is starting in the full document. You've got here 6C, 2, sources of greenhouse gas emissions in cities. Water is not a source of greenhouse gas emissions that we have measured in the city of Chico. Yeah, scroll down just a little bit. There you go. You know, we're only measuring energy, transportation, and waste. And so I'm concerned that this will cause confusion. I understand the importance of addressing water. I think we've talked about that quite a bit over the last year as part of this climate action planning. But listing it as a source of greenhouse gas emissions, I think, is misleading. So just wanted to ask about that one.
Yeah, so essentially, it's not that we left water out, it's that the emissions from water are just electricity emissions, and we have all the electricity emissions are kind of like included in the electricity inventory. So we just don't have a separate water section, but a bunch of the likely, you know, a majority of the emissions from water are included.
You do have it though, it's number 4.
Yeah, it's included in the outline, so
Yeah,
that's just
in the outline.
that's just a good comment.
Okay.
So yeah, that was one, and then in section 11, the sustainability section, oh shoot, now my note to myself doesn't make any sense. I'll have to come back to that note and figure out what I was trying to say to myself. Sorry about that. The other note that I have here that does make sense is something that I don't necessarily see in the outline, but I think has been a pretty significant theme throughout. And that is the need for our partners and what we need our partners to do. So maybe there's a section somewhere on identified partners, or you know, I'm not sure what that should look like in the outline. I didn't really come up with a good spot for it, but you know, we've talked about that we're calling on BCAG for beeline improvements, right? We're calling on some of these organizations and institutions, and I think that somewhere in the document we need to specifically call out those partners and what we are asking them to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we are planning on calling that out kind of through our measures in the measure section. But I think we could also make a reference to that in the section 9 in the greenhouse gas reduction strategy, and just call out that, you know, while the city has all these levers to pull and we're really looking at those, there's other things that we're just going to need partners to help accomplish. So yeah, that's a great point.
Great, thank you.
I guess I would follow up on that. It would be then helpful for the commission to have those partners identified, because we're at future meetings looking to bring in partners. And if they're in the plan, they're identified in the plan, they see where they are in the plan, I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah.
I guess what, you know, in the past, whenever we have a partner come in, they see themselves as completely separate. And if we can identify the way that they're actually a partner, that would be helpful. BCAG, for example.
Right. I'm remembering now what my note to myself was for 11 for the sustainability section. What are these measures? Have we seen these measures before? I know we've seen the greenhouse gas reduction measures, right? We've been talking about that for months. What, like, can you give me an example of what these are?
This section, yeah, so this section is something that we add in as kind of like an option. We generally get feedback at some point in the process of like, hey, what are, we have these measures that the city is going to do. We're going to, push these education programs forward, and we're going to do ordinances. But what is the role of the community? So this is a place where we can translate some of our key measures into like what we want the community or what the community can actually do to contribute on a day-to-day basis. So what we were going to do is go through all of our kind of key measures and then kind of move those into this community sustainability section where we're not going to quantify them as reductions, but it's something that the community will be able to look at and say, oh, okay, like, yeah, I can easily have a compost bin, or I can easily, walk or ride my bike one day instead of driving. Like, it just kind of translates these high level thoughts into like specific actions that the community can engage with more readily.
I like that. I would recommend giving that a different title so that it's a bit more clear, sustainability in the home or something like that, so that it's clear that that is, we're calling, these are community actions that the average person can just do in their home.
Yeah, that's great. We likely do that, but I think it's important to make that clear here. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, those were all the notes that I had. This is a lot. This is good. Anybody else have comments on the outline? Questions? Can't see anybody if they're raising hands. Scroll here. Anybody pipe up? Okay. Well, hearing
So I
no.
also
Sorry,
have one
I
other
had another
thing,
one. I was on.
or a few other
on
things.
mute.
I think Mike has something.
Yeah, thanks.
Go for
Sorry.
it.
I forgot I was on mute. Just kind of quickly running through that, the outline there, as well as some of the other examples you sent from other cities. I guess another thing that just sort of popped out for me was how in this document, this final document, and then all of the things that we just went through on the funding, how that also gets communicated in here in this document. And I had kind of my third question, which Sherry kind of touched on, was the sort of what aspects of the funding things we looked at are for which audience, like what is for the city, what's for consumers, what's for businesses. I'm just trying to think ahead to like, how can we have the greatest impact of spurring action for the city as an entity, for businesses in the city, and for consumers, and how we kind of weave that into this and these sections and tying this into that funding.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think in general, the funding and financing strategy is for the city. It's for the city to implement their actions. But I think there are enough things in there and some more things we can pull together for businesses and community members that we could probably include a subsection on that. And maybe it goes with these, the sustainability at home, or, how climate action at home or something section to kind of supplement that. Talk a little bit internally on the best way to do that and like how much we can do there, but I think we should be able to put something together.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I know this is primarily the city's document, but if we're going to add some of this sustainability and it sort of goes to, residents, if we've also can kind of make that connection over to these funding opportunities as well, if we're bringing in this extra kind of sustainability discussion, I think that would be great. Thank you.
So along the same lines of funding and financing, I do like that you have a comment on funding in the executive summary. And I'm just wondering if you can move it off of page 5 and get it closer to page 3 or 2, right? Funding is one of the biggest issues that's come up in almost every conversation we have. And, you know, the idea that we're thought of the funding as soon as we thought of having to do this stuff is kind of the vibe.
Yeah, especially the stuff that falls on individual households. I mean, when we were doing the community outreach and the input we were getting from people, it was always about, you know, it was the stuff that impacted individuals, and they were worried about the costs of these things. And so we need to stress that they're not going to have to bear this by themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we actually get into the measures and start looking at like what community members are going to have to do, like actually have to do as part of this program, it's pretty minimal. Like a lot of the things we're looking at are like new construction requirements, expanding bike lanes that hopefully we'll be getting grants and other funding for. So I don't think we're in a place where the community is going to be saddled with these incredible costs. You know, we might be talking a cent a kilowatt hour more if we opt up to 100% renewable electricity. That's kind of the going rate for a lot of the CCAs. But things are pretty, you know, things reasonable. But I hear that, Kirk, and we can look through. I think probably the biggest concern is like the changes to our home equipment, our home appliances, and we'll put together what we can now. But I think that space in particular is going to be changing pretty rapidly. So we'll do the best we can to be up to date. That's one of the downsides of all of this is it does change really fast, especially funding sources.
Sure.
I guess if I could just add to that a little, I don't want to beat this too long, but that's the first thing that people ask us. And so it needs to be the first thing that you tell them in some sense is that you know, if it isn't going to cost as much. I want to point out that one of the commissioners on our own commission who's been here and hearing all of this stuff has misinformation, right? I mean, come on, this is the big problem is that everyone thinks that climate change is an issue, but it's going to be too costly and we can't do anything about it. And so that's this kind of idea that and it's not that we're going to tell them it doesn't cost anything, but that you've already thought about it. And until you say that, they're not even going to listen to you, is my fear of this. Psychologically, just thinking of the social psychology of it. That's the thing they're walking into first. Try to get that one figured out, at least, you know, as they say, inoculated, at least give them something to keep reading. Because I'm afraid they're not going to get to page 5.
I think Mark's right about this.
I think bottom line up front might be a good motto to employ here.
I hear that. I think we talk a little bit about it at the beginning of the intro as well. So I think we could probably expand on that a bit and reference the funding financing section. And then we can also bring it to the executive summary earlier on, just so it's really at front of mind that we're looking at the most cost-effective opportunities here.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll just last thing, I just think it's important that that the reader knows that you considered it right up front. That we worry about it as much as they do.
And it's pretty clear that they worry about it a lot from reading the comments.
This is Rebecca. Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, plus one to all of that. And just thinking in the context of the plan, it'd be great to format something in such a way where, you know, the reader, you know, whether like a believer or skeptic on the fence can just like jump in and know what part is like relevant to them as a business, as an individual. You know, what's the city doing? You know what I mean? Be able to, I don't see that like stratification. Like in the outline, but just making it pretty apparent, like what's going to impact individuals and, where they can refer to the cost benefit analysis. I think that would, maybe help folks with that initial reaction of like, what are you making me do and what's it going to cost?
Ryan, what I think is you're getting comments now from a frontline community. What do I got to do now? Haven't I already done enough? Haven't I already suffered enough? Hasn't this been bad enough? Now what do I got to do? I mean, that's where we are in this community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to add that it is not fair for us to presume like a cost is not significant to other folks, whether it's a burden on the developer or an owner, whether it's like on, $1 or a cent per kilowatt hour, just in the interest of like, equitable public engagement. Individuals can make up their mind if they think it's, too much or not enough. I think, we just do a really great job to offer that information up front without, trying to convince people it's not going to be a burden. They can decide if it's a burden or not based on their budget.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Good, excellent points and conversations. What else? Not hearing nothing else, perhaps we'll move on to the next item.
I just have one comment. Other than that, Ryan, you're doing a great job. I mean, this is a good outline. And I think it is a good plan.
Awesome. Well, good to hear. And before we move on, I have some more things to share with you and get some feedback on while we're here. So the next thing is we have
Can we go off agenda?
No, this is part of the agenda.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, this has been cleared. I'm not going completely rogue here. But we have set up kind of a very rough draft of our the final document will be done in InDesign, not in Word, so it gives us a little more control over the look and feel of the document. We're going to do our best to try to get some graphics and photos. So this is our first shot. Brendan and Molly saw this briefly. We just got it done in time to show you guys. So excited to hear your feedback. The colors and graphics are kind of based off of the city's logo. So we got the browns and greens and kind of curvy edges. But yeah, this is kind of how we are thinking about putting the look and feel of the document. We'll have a lot of call out boxes with like notes. So we've got our note about COVID-19 and how that impacted outreach here, kind of a vision for the city, some of the leading principles, which we do talk about: economic opportunity, social equity, affordable housing, quality of life. We get into this is like history of sustainability in Chico and how we've done on our goals so far and how the emissions of things have gone up or down over time based on the inventory. And then we've got kind of a timeline of state climate action and then Chico's action. So we can kind of see how things have progressed over time. A little bit about the Climate Action Commission, you guys, how great you were. And then some notes about our community engagement, when we did things, who we talked to, some of the feedback we got. A little bit of climate science, like what's going on, what we expect to happen, how greenhouse gas effect works, impacts of Chico are kind of expected impacts. So we get into population growth, employment and housing changes. We talk a bit about, don't have a vulnerability analysis, but we bring in some of the vulnerability assessment information, have our call out about campfire, public health and safety, wildfire, drought, kind of the impacts of climate change. And that wraps up our intro, and then move on into the inventory and forecast, regulations, targets, and then into the rest of the outline. But yeah, what you guys think? Again, for super rough draft, so happy to hear whatever stylistic design comments you may have.
Right, yeah, just to be clear, this is just kind of, again, within the outline framework. Do you like the look and feel? We're not reading words and editing right now.
The first thing that popped into my head when I saw it was national and state park signs.
Can we see the front cover again? Oh, that's nice.
Also, email maybe this out and get comments like via email if that would be easier for you guys. And I'm not sure. What do you think, Brendan?
If so, it's literally on the style, not on the content.
Right.
So, well, I'll wait for other comments.
I can't decide if I like the national state park feel. There's a piece of me that does love it, but there's a piece of me that feels like it's piracy. I don't know. What does everybody else think?
I like the color scheme, so.
Okay.
I did have the same sort of reaction, like, why brown? But it was just a reaction.
It is a little. It is a little state parky.
Okay.
But the overall graphic layout, you know, I like it. I'm familiar with InDesign. I think it's a good graphic layout. I think it's also important for our audience, you know, to a certain extent. It's like it's our jobs with our team to do more of the technical detail, and then this is the communication that goes out to the, you know, the city and the public. And I think having a really good graphic layout and a design and call out charts and graphics and bullets, and those are all great things to communicate the message. And so from that perspective, I think it looks good, and not having just pages and pages of text without these kind of graphics that help focus people in on the key points.
I think we can certainly work on the brown. That's something I'm hearing. So that's easy.
Well,
I mean, I kind of like it. It just shocked me a little bit.
I had the same reaction when our graphics guy sent this over. I was like, that's a lot of brown, but like the more it's different. You know, everyone always has like greens and blues because that's like natural, but I feel like the brown is a little different. It's cool.
yeah.
I gotta agree. It looks like a lot of the layout that I've seen on others, but I've never seen that much brown.
It's very earthy.
It just sort of radiates. I mean, I like the layout. I like the open space, a lot of white. There's a lot of graphics in it. It looks readable. But it just kind of carries the message, tree hugger, you know? And I'm not sure that all of Chico is into that. And maybe we need some more, like that one picture there that you're now showing. That's the world that most people live in. They live in housing developments, and they live downtown, and they live in the malls, you know? So maybe we need a couple more pictures of that kind of stuff, you know, so that it's not just for nature lovers.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're really trying to focus on too is like more photos of people and people in Chico instead of just like pretty landscapes, because I think it does help like bring that together a little bit more. So these are a lot of stock photos right now to show the layout, but that's one thing that we're gonna try to incorporate as we move forward.
Yeah, no,
I think that will be important to humanize the document.
Yeah.
And we, just so you guys are aware, I just sent Ryan and Alyssa a bunch of pictures we have of Chico and Chico projects and Chico people yesterday. So I would imagine that a lot of these photos in here are just stock photos and not Chico specific. So that will change.
Yeah.
I'll throw my
This
2
is
cents worth in
Rebecca.
on the brown. The brown is a little much.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind it. I kind of like the state parks look. That kind of gets the message across. But like the opening photo on the whole thing, instead of shooting them way up in the canyon, like up in the upper park, maybe we'd want to do something within the park, like the lower park, like around 1 mile. I mean, everybody's familiar with that.
Yeah, we're just getting by off on this, just graphics right now and kind of layout and format.
Yeah, the layout format's great.
Good.
Agreed.
So again, now, and like Cherie said, in order to kind of stay on agenda, I don't want to get too far off.
Well, I just had, my one comment is that first photo, and I wonder if there's a back page. So if you go to that first photo that you have, the front page, is there a back page that we can have the water gone? Because that's what's going to happen in 2050 if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, I wanted to just offer, and I don't know that like Rincon, you guys haven't done like user acceptability studies in terms of like this is an action plan. Like we want people to read this and then take action. And I do think like the sort of park feel feels passive. And at Grid, we did this, we did this user experience study for, equity EV adoption, and did a lot of like cross-cultural, like just research on, what will make people buy an EV. What do people care about? They care about the cost. They care about it working. These are what people are concerned about before they go to adopt or support. And then, anyway, long story short, and I could share that if that's of interest to anyone, but the point of it is that people will take action when they see people like them doing something that makes them happy. Then they're like, oh, I can see myself switching out to an induction stove, or, I can see myself getting behind like a utility scale solar array. Like, where do we see utility scale solar arrays where people are actually enjoying them, and want them in their community? There's like, there's a community solar array in Sacramento that's, a part of a master plan for, park development, or, large scale solar that's, where people are like, parking and going to go and enjoy a game. So I don't think it's irrelevant, because if you don't want this document and the effort that's gone into it to get, like people to, look at it academically, if you want people to take an action based on the information, then we need to, in my experience, it's going to be helpful to show people taking an action and enjoying it.
That's great. Yeah, I'm on board. I think that's a great idea.
So Ryan, do you want to quickly touch on the last topic?
Yes. So the last thing I have to share, I need to stop this. Okay. Yeah, see that Excel? I've got a updated schedule for you all. As we kind of work towards the end of this project and finalizing this document and all the measures and all that good stuff. So we're in March now. We're kind of working through sections 1 through 3 is the first batch, and then we'll get started on 4 through 6. And then we're looking at having, I think this has actually been changed. I'll put this back over here. Focusing our next commission meeting on electrification, and kind of having a bit of a public space for people to come and talk through that topic. And I'll give a little presentation that we've given before to a focus group, but open that up to the bigger public to answer questions about what this means and what are we actually recommending, and facts on that. So hopefully gets some of the questions that are surrounding electrification. So that would be in April. And then the hope is that we will have our document completed and our CEQA completed by the end of May. And then the draft document and the CEQA would go out for public review. We would review that as part of the commission meeting in June. I think in May, you'll get to see a bunch more of the document, probably see some drafts and some other sections. So kind of provide some interim feedback, and then get to see the final draft in June. Then we'll take your feedback and any comments we get from the public review period, integrate all that, and provide you the final to review and hopefully recommend to City Council in July. And then we'll move forward for City Council adoption in August is kind of the schedule moving forward.
Thanks, Brad.
Are we going to have any outside guests for the electrification workshop?
Yes, the goal is to reach out to the individual you suggested, and I had mentioned that there's a local developer that's doing some projects that are electrification, and we're looking to how to integrate them as well.
Will that be a targeted invite specific like the last one, or just general public?
Well, it'll be general, but I've already reached out, not with this specific time frame yet, but in meetings I have with the development community and kind of highlight. And today I did a community development update for the chamber, or with the chamber and Chico Builders Association, Valley Contractors Exchange, and highlighted this is a topic that we're thinking about for April. Again, we need to make this all come together for April. But again, I highlighted it then. And so, yes, it'll be focused invite as well.
Okay.
Thank you for staff and everyone else for making that happen.
Any other comments for Ryan about the outline, the template, or the schedule?
On that electrification thing, is that going to deal with retrofits also, Brendan?
Well, I mean, it's a general discussion about electrification. So I don't know what you mean by retrofits. Yes, I mean, there's for new build, and yes, there's a portion of it that has to do with retrofits as well.
Well, I mean, there are appliance dealers in town that deal with some of this stuff.
That'll be part of the discussion, whether or not, is the industry ready for electrification prior to the state bringing it online? So that'll be part of the greater discussion, yes.
All right.
Okay. Anything else for Ryan?
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you being here. You're welcome to stick around, but we'll move on to our next agenda item. 3.3 Civic Spark Initiative Update. Austin.
Hey everyone. So let me share my screen real quick. Oh crap. Let's find how to. Can y'all see my screen or not? One, screen, two. There we go. And then you should be seeing this, correct? Okay, sweet. So essentially, what I've been spending on the past few months working on a stakeholder survey, which we hope to get out pretty soon. I just want to give a quick rundown before we have a quick discussion or an open question for the commission. But clearly, just the idea of the survey really is to get out to the public and inform the public of what SB 379 is, and then to build upon what the impacts of climate change are to Chico. So we have a short section of the impacts themselves, taken from CalAdapt, and then kind of packaged into information about it. And then a few emission scenarios taken from CalAdapt to kind of put it into more context of how Chico would be affected by climate change. And then moving into that, after that information, the participants of the survey would be given questions Just two short questions, essentially asking about those impacts and which impacts they worry about the most. And then that leads finally into a section about solutions, which is meant to, it's meant for the participant to take the information they've read through in the survey and then apply that to scenarios. So I have three separate questions here that are essentially three separate scenarios of a specific impact that will affect Chico. But it's being put in a specific scenario for them to read through, and then they're given a few questions or a few answers to choose from of how they would respond to that scenario. And then finally, just a demographic question, which is optional, just to help better understand who's answering the survey and so forth. Okay, and then stop sharing.
Yeah,
And then-
so
Yeah,
keep going. You can go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, and that just leads to y'all, the commission. We're just looking for two commissioners to take a look at this survey and give their feedback that we can then implement into the survey. And then once that's done, then that will go live. The survey will go live to the public.
Yeah, so ideally we would have had this ready to share with all of you at this meeting, but we did not. So we would love if we had two volunteers to kind of help us round this out. We would like to go live within the next couple of weeks, so we're not falling behind. We'd want to wrap up all of our engagement by May, so that leaves Austin enough time to start drafting strategies. We'll have this survey, and then we'll do another round of engagement through Conveo, like we did on the CAP, where we're actually targeting specific feedback on potential measures. So apologize we didn't have this fully ready for you guys to review. We'll have something for you to look at in April for sure. But in the meantime, if we could get two volunteers to kind of just look over the survey, that would be great. And we can talk about that here. I can email you guys offline.
And I just want to give some kudos to Austin because he's trying to walk a very thin line of educating people on a very complicated topic. So there's opportunities for people to dig in a little bit deeper, but also keeping it something that's manageable and that people can complete in 5 to 10 minutes. And that's always the challenge. And I think he's done a great job. And so again, we just want a little bit of feedback from two volunteers, and then I think he'll have a blessing and we'll move forward with this.
I saw Mark's hand shoot up.
So yeah, I volunteer. I'm ready to tear Austin's work apart.
That's what I do best. Any other takers?
I can work twice as
I
hard.
can take a look.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to take a look. This is Rebecca. Yeah.
Rebecca.
Thank you,
It's
Rebecca.
fairly,
Yeah, Mark.
it's fairly polished.
I'll get this sent out to you either Friday or Monday.
Cool.
Will this survey be sent by mail or will it be online again?
It'll be online. And we're going to use the same stakeholder database. We've added a few additional ones. Maybe I'll send that to Mark and Rebecca as well to look over. And we obviously, we don't have constant contact or anything like AIM was using, but we'll be sending out continuous emails to these organizations using Facebook, doing press releases, everything we did with the CAP, and hopefully we can get just as much or more participation.
Okay.
Can AIM share their constant contact list? I mean, I feel like that's kind of part of what we get like as a deliverable, right?
I mean, yes, I have all the contact lists. We just don't have constant contact to shoot out emails at, 6 p.m. every couple of days.
It's free.
Well, we just have, we have Austin to do that. He's our constant contact.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Austin. Anybody have any other comments, questions for him? Okay. Yeah, look forward to seeing it. Thanks, Rebecca and Mark, for stepping up to help out with that. I appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, business from the floor and public comments. We have, it looks like 4 attendees. Molly, do you want to unmute them individually?
Yeah,
Know
so
about it?
attendees, just so I'm going to do what we did last meeting. So if you have any items or anything you want to comment on of one of the 3 items we just talked about or anything else, I'm going to unmute you. So you can just let us know if you have anything to say. If you don't have anything to say, you can let us know or just don't talk at all. So we have Katie, do you have anything you'd like to comment on?
Can you hear me, Molly?
Yes.
So the chamber would be happy to help distribute the survey for you. We do have constant contact.
Great.
We'd be happy to help because we know the more input, the better, the more valid. I think it'll be received better.
Awesome. We really appreciate that. And you are on our list of people to reach out to anyway. So yes, if you could help us, that would be great.
Yep, happy to help.
Thank you. Okay, where did all the participants go? All right. Kate, do you have anything to comment on?
No, I don't. Thank you all for your work.
No problem. And then we have a Boniface. Do you have anything to say? Comment on?
No comment, ma'am. Thanks so much to the panel for a good job.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, that's all the public comments we have.
I was muted. Okay. Great. Moving on then, item number 5, reports and communications.
Yes, I have something to say. So the city council met on Tuesday to appoint boards and commissioners. They voted to extend the recruitment period for the Airport Commission, Architecture Review, Historic Preservation Board, and the Climate Action Commission. The reason being is many of the candidates that applied for many people applied for several different positions, and there was concern that there was not going to be enough candidates considering the number of positions to fill on the other boards and commissions. So they have opened this recruitment period up. Applications will be accepted until April 12th for just these 3 boards and commissions. I encourage you guys to share this with anyone you think might be willing to serve or a good fit for the commission. I've emailed this to a few other people myself who I didn't see their name in the pot. So I'll share this with you. I'll send you guys a formal email, and if you want to forward this to anyone you think is interested in serving, that would be greatly appreciated. And I don't know if Brendan, you have anything else to add to that?
Well, just thanks to those who are continuing to serve. It's greatly appreciated. It's kind of that clunkier than usual transition of filling the boards and commission spots. And so anyway, thank you.
And I guess with that, can you get confirmation from everybody that you're still willing to serve for at least another month?
Yes, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I had reapplied.
Great.
I'll stay on and help.
Thanks, Dave.
Awesome.
Rebecca, are you good for another month at least?
Yeah.
Great.
We appreciate it, everyone.
Any other reports, communications, Mark?
Well, that wasn't the full motion of the city council, I don't believe. The city council also has to review the purpose and reason for all 3 of those commissions. Isn't that correct?
Yes, there was a request, in addition to the recruitment extension, to have staff come back, and my understanding is now it'll be a verbal kind of to discuss the roles and function of those boards and commissions.
Who will be delivering that to council?
Well, I will be on behalf of ARHPB and the Climate Action Commission, and I would imagine Eric Gustafson will, as we're related to the Airport Commission.
Okay. Let us know if you need any support in preparing for that, if there's anything we can do.
Okay, certainly.
Brendan, I realize it might kind of be semantics, but it seemed, I mean, I heard some of that, and was there a distinction between commission versus committee, or was that just kind of getting mixed up?
that was a separate discussion as well.
Yeah.
Where they requested that this was mostly related or specifically related to the Bidwell Park and Playground Commission that has like 3 standing subcommittees. And they said those aren't going to continue. That business should be done by the Bidwell Park and Playground Commission. And if they do want to set up a specific subcommittee, that request should be brought to the city council. So that's what that was related to.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
I also listened to it, and so this is my opinion of it, but I heard there was general concern of trying to possibly get rid of the Architectural Review Board and change that thing. I think the Climate Action Commission was just thrown into the mix because it didn't have enough members. I think it would be appropriate for the chair just to reach out to the mayor and find out if that was his opinion or not. I think that's something the chair can do. Just say, hey, are you thinking about our purpose? He did not mention the Climate Action Commission by name. And so that I think is a point that could be clarified. I think they really are looking at trying to figure out what is the distinction of the Architectural Review Board and its purpose. That's what I heard. We got thrown into the mix, and we should try to clarify that if we could before this goes any further. My opinion.
Thank you. Other reports and communications?
Nothing.
Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna call it. Good meeting, packed agenda. We got a lot
Very
to
good
catch up
meeting.
on, I think. We'll adjourn at 7:26, and we will come back here on WebEx on Thursday, April 8th. In the meantime, everybody be safe, be well, and thank you all for your time.
Great.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.